Hello, everyone. I'm Bill Gadless from Emagine and emagineHealth. I have here with me our Director of SEO at Emagine, Brent Williams. I want to welcome you to the first episode of our new podcast, Outcomes. The purpose of this podcast is to share, discuss, and uncover marketing strategies and tactics that lead to better outcomes for healthcare and biopharma organizations. Um, Outcomes from their marketing and ultimately better outcomes for patients, which is why this whole industry exists at the end of the day. Although we might occasionally switch it up, you'll find that most of the topics we cover will come from a digital first perspective, with AI playing an increasingly important role as well. Here's what we won't do. We won't waste time catching up on each other's weekends or chit-chatting about sports or weather or pets. Our objective is to deliver the most effective, up-to-date marketing insights based on a lot of real-world experience that we live here every day with our clients. So I'll ask you, audience, to hold us to that. So without further ado, we're going to talk today about SEO. As I said, Brent here is the Director of SEO at Emagine. SEO is an interesting topic. It always has been. We've been doing SEO here for 20 plus years, and it's always been a very unique topic of conversation. It's fascinating to a lot of people. There's always been a lot of mystique around it, but I also think it's probably the topic of all the things that we do here that comes with the most misconceptions for some reason. SEO it's one of those things that most companies think just isn't relevant to their particular business. And that's why here, even 20 plus years into the world of SEO, I still think far too few companies do any of it, or certainly don't do it well enough. And since you and I have been working together, Brent, now for a few years, I've always been impressed with the way that you talk about SEO from a strategic perspective. You and I don't talk a lot about the technical aspects of SEO. First of all, I'm not a very technical person. Second of all, I don't care a lot about what happens under the hood. I'm a marketing person, but you always bring very interesting thoughts and perspectives as to how marketers should be thinking about SEO and ultimately reaching their audiences. And that's where we're going to focus here today. I don't think we're going to talk much about nuts and bolts and tactics with SEO, but really marketing strategy. So Brent, you and your SEO team, you work with a lot of healthcare and biopharma clients. And before we dive into some of the specific strategies we're going to focus on in this episode, can you explain to me just how a typical marketer in these industries usually comes into an SEO engagement, how they're thinking, and what some of the more common pitfalls and misconceptions are?
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Bill. As I listen to you explain our conversations over the years, it brings to mind several thoughts. I'd say the one thing that people come into it as with a lot of questions. They're always looking for SEO is always kind of this mystery activity that marketers don't necessarily understand, but they know they need it. And over the years, it evolves. I mean, heck, month to month, it evolves with the way the algorithms and everything work. But SEO is a long-term process, and it's a compounding process. One of the conversations I have seemingly at least once a week is when you're doing SEO correctly, it's content creation, but you're designing that content creation to reach a specific audience. And every piece of content acts as a target for that audience. Over time, that content doesn't expire. When you look at other types of marketing, you do a social post, and then the next day you have to do another social post, or that traffic goes away because feeds are constantly being updated and being fed. With paid, you have to pay for an ad to run. Once somebody clicks on that or you close that campaign, you got to do it all again. With SEO, it compounds that. You build a piece of content that targets an audience, and once it settles in at a top position in search, it's going to stay there. And yes, competition comes along. We have to maintain it. There might take updates, might need some tweaking based on the way that the algorithms work, but it can be maintained then while you're creating the next piece of content. And over time, you've built several pieces, hopefully a lot of pieces of content targeting slightly different audiences, and that continues to work. And while, like I said, there is maintenance that has to be done on that and maintaining that, you're allowed the freedom to then keep adding more content, identifying new pieces of audience or new segments of the industry that you're in that you want to target, and go after those on top of all the other stuff that's still working. And that's really what we struggle with to have clients understand, is that SEO isn't just waving a wand. We have the joke in the industry of SEO in a can, like I'll just fix it and it'll work. And it doesn't. It's a competitive industry that we're always competing against being the best possible option for Google's users. And I'd say when you get into misconceptions, that's what a lot of people don't understand, is that we're not serving our customers yet. We're serving Google's customers. And Google has a reputation of providing the best possible answer, the content that has the best possible answer. If they stop holding themselves to that standard, then their audience goes away. They go to other search engines. Same thing with any of the search engines. They're all competing, trying to show the best product. Their product is hopefully your website, and you have to give the best answer to that question. And that's where the competition level comes in, is being able to look at what is being rewarded by Google, what Google has found through their algorithm to be the best answer, and provide a better answer, or a more complete answer, and get that user engagement when people click on your search result with your content that sends signals to Google's algorithm that says, this is serving the need. And when you back up to that progressive accumulation of content inventory, over time that builds up. You build a lot of authority. Google sees that your website is serving 50 keywords worth of audience very well. Well, obviously you're delivering really good content. They're going to show you more, build your authority on your website. So that's kind of the basis of where we're always working from, is that the piece of content we create today, ideally and usually a year from now, is still generating traffic while we've created a lot of other content along the way that's also still working.
In terms of the types of content and search phrases that are targeted, I mean, I assume it's probably pretty common. This is what it was like 20 years ago when I was talking to people directly about their SEO, which, I never really knew what I was doing, but this is when we were first starting out. And, people come into an SEO strategy, and I would be one of them, with certain phrases that they want to be showing up for when people are searching for them. If you use a very simple example like us, it would be marketing in healthcare, marketing in pharma. We actually do come up under a lot of those types of things. However, a lot of the most obvious phrases to your clients are I would assume, just like years ago, they're not the realistic approach to getting traffic to their site and reaching their audiences, because they're going to be too competitive or too broad. I would assume that is probably still the case with you and your team oftentimes, correct?
Yeah, the we have clients come in and they want to rank for a very popular term, and we have to look at what's being served to people searching for that. Is it Has Google identified similar content that is aligns with the client's product or service? Um, a lot of times the intent isn't there. We're dealing a lot in the B2B space as opposed to the B2C space. And say you're talking about a condition, um, say asthma, and you're developing a product to serve people that have asthma, but yet developing that product is different than the commercialized side of it where you're targeting the people with asthma. You're building your product or your service around building that product to a sponsor or to a the original developer, and maybe your service is the management of clinical trials, or your service is the manufacturing of that product. So the client isn't directly targeting asthma or asthma symptoms; they're targeting asthma therapy development, and that's a much smaller audience, but that's your audience. That's the right audience. So I always like to tell people, more isn't better when it comes to traffic. Um, when it Just because there's a lot of search volume around a term doesn't mean it's the right term for you. And in a lot of cases, it isn't definitely isn't the place to start, because that's not where your clients are looking. That's not where your potential clients are looking. They're looking for somebody to develop a therapeutic for asthma as opposed to a therapeutic for asthma. And there's a vast difference in the search results there, as well as the competition. It could be that there are 100 people a month looking for your service, and you're trying to play in a pool of 100,000 people searching. That is maybe more of a B2C, a consumer based search. So if we can narrow that down and say that we're not going to bring you 100,000 users to the site because you don't need that. Your audience is 100 people for this. Let's target that. And we measured the value of that based on the conversions. So we have metrics set up on the website to measure. They landed on this page, they went to this page, which is how we directed them to, and then they filled out a form or they clicked a link to call. And if we can deliver the right conversions to you, it really doesn't matter how many users you get on your site, as long as it's the right users.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I would assume in a lot of cases, marketers are looking at certain vanity metrics that are going to possibly sound most impressive to their CEO or CFO. I remember one of the first books I ever read on advertising was Ogilvy on Advertising, and David Ogilvy said in that book that anybody who, this was back in the day where print was a thing and digital wasn't even here, but that anybody who takes out a full page ad in a magazine or a newspaper is not concerned with their ROI. They're concerned with the vanity of saying we got the full page ad. And I would assume that when it comes to all digital marketing, including SEO, that some of the metrics that people are concerned with and maybe holding you and your team to sometimes are more ones that are going to sound good and look really good to their bosses, as opposed to the ones like you're saying that might really mean effectiveness, like conversions and the right traffic, which might be at a lower volume.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand brand awareness. And thought leadership. It's not really where we spend a lot of time on the SEO side, but there is value there that we can glean from, sometimes slightly realigning content to match an audience keyword of some kind. Um, I think there's a lot of traditional marketers out there that still go after the billboard at the busiest intersection. And if you think back, and been around long enough to understand that mentality, we weren't able to measure a lot of the marketing that was done 20 years ago. Even for that matter, 10 years ago, we didn't have the measurement um, of the whole marketing funnel at that point. So, you spend the most money to buy the busiest billboard, you get the most cars driving by, hoping that your target audience is um, part of that audience going by. Now we can laser focus content at a specific audience based on what they're looking for and what their intent is. If it's informational, then the marketing funnel is going to be longer, but it's still a funnel. We can still guide that through using, UX bringing UX into the mix. That, hey, we're getting you an audience. Let's see if we can capitalize on that and improve the conversion rate by, say, 2%. If we improve a conversion rate even by 2% at the level of clientele that we're speaking to, 2% might be 5 more deals within a set period of time. And we're not talking about $50 pair of tennis shoes. We're talking about $100,000 opportunities that are being brought to them that may be lost in the mix normally, or lost completely because we don't have content targeted towards that. So it's a matter of looking at the entire revenue cycle and what that lead means to you. And on the paid media side, that's always something very much in focus, because you buy an ad, you get a set amount of clicks for the amount of money that you purchased. We need to get a definite ROI on that immediately, or at least have the metrics behind what the ROI, or what the conversion rate was. But with SEO, we can look at that on a longer scale and say, okay, this article is in front of this audience, and this audience we have determined has the right intent. They're looking for a service. They're looking for help. Um, we know that there's only maybe 50 people a month looking for that, but we know that our conversion rate is 10%. So once that article's there and is ranking, that becomes a reoccurring revenue source at that point, that you could be off making other pieces of content to be targeting other audiences that hopefully also get a couple percent conversion. And it doesn't take a whole lot of maintenance to keep all of that content going. So it's
Sure.
the more content you're able to generate that's thoughtfully curated through keyword targeting and audience evaluation, the more you're able to do that, the more your net expands and allows more relevant users to come in and become customers.
Now, the example you used where it's about sales and conversions and could ultimately lead to $100,000 or really millions of dollars in contracts. If you're talking, big CROs and potentially managing clinical trials for a pharma, the B2B price tag can be pretty high. But let's talk about other KPIs and tell me what else you guys look at, because for instance, like again, that's pretty easy when it comes to a B2B. I don't mean easy to achieve and not always easy to see, because we don't always have insight into the complete sales loop and in our client CRM and marketing automation systems and all that. But in terms of what you're trying to achieve, it's a conversion that will ultimately lead to sales. However, talking about a biotech where it's their pre-commercial and some of their objectives are just to improve investor sentiment and investor awareness, or possibly recruiting for top scientific talent. So the objectives for these other companies are not always about a conversion that will lead to a sale. In those cases, what are some of the other KPIs that you guys will still look at and that you consider important other than just a conversion?
Sure. So in the past, we were a little bit limited with our scope that we were able to look at. So there was a metric that everybody kind of hung their hat on, which was called bounce rate, which means somebody showed up on your website and then they left immediately without doing anything. And that was basically, did the door open? Did they stay? If not, then it marked against the bounce rate. What we're seeing is that is pretty much been sunsetted. And as of July 1st, that will be sunsetted. But what we're switching to is actually much more engaging, because it's around the engagement of people on your site. So it's not enough to just get them there and get them to stay. It's get them there and get them to do something else. And you only do that by targeting the correct audience. From the SEO side, we got to make sure that we're bringing the right people in, because if you show up on a website and it doesn't speak to what your needs are or what you're looking for, you're not going to engage with it. So engagement on a website is anything from scrolling through the site, staying on that page longer than a couple seconds, to clicking links, to downloading resources, to watching videos, listening to podcasts. Staying on that page and engaging with it sends signals back to the algorithm that this user showed up, they found what they wanted, and they spent time looking into it. So taking a website visitor or a web page visitor from 10 to 20 seconds to a minute and a half can have a really a major impact on your website's performance. And that comes from curating the right content that is engaging, multimedia, because everybody absorbs content in different ways. So having multiple ways of website use and tailoring that, looking at the metrics of that engagement of an audience, and then tailoring more content towards that. So if you understand that your users really like watching videos, then you need to do more video. If they spend a lot of time looking at a chart or a graphic that is informative, then you need more charts and graphics. It just applies kind of across the board at that point. What a lot of people miss the mark on is that they'll have multiple segments that they're targeting, and they'll try to apply those elements to universally across the site. And say on the clinical side, say you've got somebody that needs a surgery, a routine surgery. That's not going to take as much engagement as somebody that's researching a major condition that is life-threatening, or they're looking for a second opinion. So they're going to engage with that longer. So you have to tailor that content correctly based on what you see in that segment, for what is engaging people. If I just need to find a second opinion for a condition, I don't need a whole lot of content. I just need to see that you have a second opinion option. On the other side of it, certain services that you offer, say in a biotech situation, some of those are well defined and people know what they are. They just want to see your expertise at it. So maybe more case studies, maybe more examples of your work, statistics around the work that you've done. Whereas somebody that is more informative, or it's a more technical situation, they may take a longer view of that and need more information in order for them to be convinced to move to the next level or to contact you.
And to simplify it, I mean, it sounds like basically it's, when it's not all about a conversion and a sale, it's driving people to content that, based on understanding those personas, their journeys, those audiences' objectives, driving them to content that appeal to them, and then measuring your success based on how much engagement you had with that intended content.
Right. Exactly. I mean, when you
and I think from the outside, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. You mentioned investors, and building content for investors. You have to look and see what they're engaging with, what's making them want to take that next step or learn more about your organization in order to make the investment. And sometimes that's not the nuts and bolts. Sometimes that's the culture of the organization. Sometimes that's the accolades that the organization has received, statistics behind the work that's been done, and the revenue cycle. That's obviously a big part of investing, is making sure the company makes money. So there's all of these elements, and while most of your content on your site may be focused towards the technical side, that takes a completely different type of content potentially than what you've rolled out for the consumer. On your potential customers are a much different audience than what your investor is. So basically we go back to identifying the right audience for the right content, or vice versa.
Yeah, and I think we preach it a lot. which is every company needs to take a step back before any marketing tactic and develop their personas. Those personas distinct journeys, which are all different from one another. You're talking investors, patients, HCPs, B2B buyers. Again, when we're talking about those B2B companies, employment candidates. I mean, the audiences are endless, and for any marketing activity, just take a step back. Whether you do it professionally or you do it in a couple hours in your own conference room or on a Zoom meeting on the back of a napkin, take the time to find your audiences and their journeys, and that will help you determine the content that they need, which is instrumental to any marketing strategy, whether it's content marketing, SEO, paid, social, your website, and so forth. And then the whole, from an outsider, again, who's not an SEO person like you and your team, I'm just seeing the importance of data analytics coming more and more into play, and how much more complex that is for you, because you simply have more data to look at, and more KPIs to define and measure. Whereas, again, going back a decade or two, it was, well, where am I ranked under this phrase? And how much traffic am I getting under that phrase? Which is, it's still, I know that's still a KPI, but there's so much more to it. And now with AI coming into play, and ways to do data analytics at a whole other level, that in itself is a podcast topic that we'll have to get to. So, moving on, I'd like to use a real life example, and not a real example in that I don't want you to reveal anything about any specific clients, obviously, but we reference CROs as a general example here, because we've always done a lot of work with CROs. Sorry for anybody who's sick of all the acronyms, but that's a contract research organizations. These are the companies that manage clinical trials and all of the data for biopharma companies that are developing a drug. And so we've always worked with a lot of CROs. So Brent, let's just use an example like a CRO. Again, this is B2B. And so pretend a new CRO was coming in for an SEO engagement today, and they had, usually, a CRO is going to have a number of different services and solutions that they're selling, but they want to grow this particular service line, and they've given you that set of phrases. They've told you a little bit about those particular audiences. Walk me through that real world scenario in working with you or one of your team members, in terms of, how you would go about formulating a strategy and targeting their appropriate audiences in, one of the things that we want to talk about here is in unconventional ways that they might not be coming into it thinking of, and giving them different perspectives, other than just, again, the obvious, we want to show up under this phrase. So just walk me through that conversation.
Well, this is a very common situation where, we need to apply industry, or what the industry is doing, where the audience is. If your audience is calling a specific service by a name, it's fine to add branding to that name, or just put your own spin on it, but you still have to talk about what the audience is talking about. The algorithm serves search results mechanically. It measures the relevancy of content mechanically. So it's basically, does this string of characters that equals this term appear on the content that we're evaluating here? And if you don't call it what your audience is calling it, it's not going to show up. And it seems like an obvious statement, but the spin that is put on to entice the audience on page doesn't always equate to the content to the content that the algorithms are looking for. So, it's kind of a joke in our realm is, if you want to rank for it, you got to talk about it. And that sounds very simplistic, but that is something we run into a lot. The other thing that a lot of people don't want to talk about are the basics of their industry, to build that authority the um, around the topics that they're really pushing, the services that they're really pushing. So you don't. It seems like people want to stay away from the basics of the industry and always be on the cutting edge of thought leadership and innovation. When that's fine, like I said earlier, we support that by all means, because that has a lot of marketing value. But I always put myself in somebody that just got the job, wherever it is, as the potential client, and I don't fully understand the industry. I'm looking for those basic terms and definitions, and the idea is that if you're the one that provides that in a way that helps them do their job or understand their job better, that builds trust and authority with that person, and they're going to be the ones that you're going to be the one that they remember when they need a provider for that. And the algorithm's kind of the same way, that you can't just throw a piece of content out there that is not connected to anything else on your website that demonstrates authority and expect to rank for it without having supporting content around all of the other things that make up that term. So, aspects of it, treatments, therapeutics, experience, all that stuff has to be well orchestrated on the site and architected in order to lead to that main sales pitch of, this is what we do it very well, we've got a lot of experience, and we really want to help you. That's fine to have that, but you got to have all the supporting content that expands the footprint in order to bring those people in from the fringes that aren't directly looking for your brand and your service. And when you talk about, back to the beginning when we talked about misconceptions, that's one of the biggest misconceptions, is that I want this page to not only rank for search terms, but I also want it to be the sales page. And those two don't always work together. You got to lead people through the journey.
Yeah. And this part of the conversation, again, is where I've always just appreciated the value that you bring, because, again, I know a big part of the value that any SEO firm or an SEO person is going to bring to a company is a lot of the technical knowledge, again, a lot of the tactics that are going on, but you really, you need the right strategy and approach to your audiences in thinking about the ways that you're going to reach them, aside from, how you're optimizing a title tag and
Right.
and what technical things you're doing under the hood. Again, it's all about the audiences, and how you're going to reach them. So I want to shift gears a little bit, and thank you for all of that, and talk a little bit about, the thing that everybody's talking about, which is AI, and how, first of all, we as an agency are leveraging AI across all of our competencies at the moment. And I'm not going to claim we have that fully fleshed out. We're all figuring out, like everybody is, and it's moving rapidly. But that's across building websites, it's branding, it's content, it's SEO, it's paid, it's social. So we're leveraging AI across all of our competencies, but this is an SEO episode here today, and I want to hear from you a little bit about your thoughts, what you've seen so far, maybe questions you've had from clients, and how your team is, starting to leverage some of that technology, and even one specific question, because we've been chatting with a few marketers out there about it, and people are even wondering, not just what does this mean, how can AI benefit what SEO means today, but is AI and Chat GPT going to affect what SEO even means? In other words, someone asked us, do I need to be found under Chat GPT? Like, is that another, and I know it's integrated with Microsoft search engine, Bing or Edge or whatever they're doing with their search engines right now. So Microsoft's got it integrated. So it does mean something over there in terms of what search even means. Um, so, so kind of a multi-pronged question. Is it going to change, in your opinion? No one has these answers. Is it going to completely change what search even means? And then talk a little bit about what you guys are doing today.
Sure. So AI is like the accelerator for SEO. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that we do that AI is cutting a lot of corners for, and we'll continue to enhance that. But the biggest impact we're seeing is that there's just a flood of content because content's so easy to generate now. There's always been hacks and methods to mass generate content, but it wasn't as intelligent as it is now. So we're seeing this flood of content hitting the internet that doesn't necessarily have any authority, doesn't have the um, background to build it up over time. It's just being dumped out there, and all the search engines are combing through it, even though they're all engaged in AI. They're having to comb through that because again, they still want to deliver the best possible option. Google has done a complete 180 on AI over the last year, whereas they said that we really don't want AI content to be in our search results. To we don't care who wrote it or what wrote it, we want the best possible content, and if that's being generated by AI or if that's being generated by a lab physician that is signing off on content or writing it, we don't care as long as it's what our users want. That's the metric there. Is it engaging with for our users? Is it delivering them the information they're wanting? So what we're doing is we're using AI to look at those signals on a website and make sure that they're there. Make sure that your content not only is better than the other content that's out there, but has those signals that verify that yeah, somebody that knows what they're doing, somebody in a position of experience and education has reviewed this. You're a real organization as opposed to just a pop-up website meant to get search results. And add those validating factors to the site. Some of those are behind the scenes, some of them are on site. And luckily, there's mechanisms in place for that. Structured data is a big part of that. Not only are we leveraging AI to create structured data with the elements, all of the elements we need, um, without as much testing as we've had to do in the past, but we're using that to bolster those signals that to the search engines and ultimately the AI that this is the best possible source for you to include in your results, whether those are search results or via a chat. And luckily, that's something we've been focused on for a long time, is making sure those validation signals are there and are properly formatted and understandable. But by doing that, we've kind of put everybody ahead of the curve that that we're working with on these things, because when the AI starts looking for better sources, I mean, it's just a more advanced algorithm that is looking to deliver the best answer possible and the most trustworthy option possible. Um, our clients will be there. They've got those signals. They're already set up with the structured data, at least the basics to build on and improve their position as being the one that provides the resources to the AI for anything and anything in their industry, and become that authority that the AI comes back to look for updates and new information. So that's really kind of at the center of our focus. Plus, we're also finding that content um, with AI and a human eye is a very powerful thing. So you can figure out what elements need to be in your content much faster using AI. You can build the framework for good content with AI, and then bring the human element in to add those verifications, whether it's a doctor review or a marketer's eye to add some CTAs or call specific convertible actions to it, it's becoming really a super handy tool to make those improvements much faster. Whereas before we were kind of at the mercy of the process, and it shortcuts the process and allows us to do a lot more work, a lot better work faster.
Mm-hmm. And again, there's so much unknown. So Brett Cohen, my partner here at Emagine, we're having again a lot of conversations with people, just hearing their questions, their concerns, sharing with them what we do know about AI, and one of the things he's telling people is don't go investing much money in anything AI right now because it's going to change tomorrow, and then it's going to change next week, and it's going to change next month. This is so new, and nothing, as we've all seen, nothing has ever moved this fast ever. And there's a lot of things we don't know about SEO, and because one of the big questions is, will Chat GPT generated content with human editing, without human editing, will it be penalized by Google? I don't think anyone has that answer. I've seen opinions out there. I've seen some people post that they saw 5 or 7% lower ranking with content generated by ChatGPT versus one completely written by himself. But I can speak, a couple of blog posts we've posted have done well. So, I mean, it's there. I don't think anybody has the answers. We're all going to see. And I also was, with the AI wars happening now already, we're seeing how that's going to shake out, and definitely Google and Microsoft right at the top of that battle. There could even be legal repercussions if Google penalizes ChatGPT generated content, because then we're getting into an antitrust situation where Google's penalizing people that are using Microsoft's technology because they're the competitor. So again, we'll see. No one knows for sure where all this stuff is going to go, but it's certainly fascinating.
Over the years, I've heard SEO's dead so many times because new technology came along, and
Yeah.
the deciding factor there, and Google has put out a document saying basically what I said earlier, that we don't care as long as it serves our customers the best, and that's really what it boils down to. So if a human is looking for something, and whether it's in ChatGPT or on Bing or on Google, and it's not serving their needs, it's going to send signals that say this is not a good piece of content. If you go there and it's repetitive and uses wrong terminology, it's not going to stick. It's not going to be a engaging piece that people use. And so the audience is ultimately going to be the deciding factor. Is this content useful, helpful? Can I trust it? And if so, it's good content. Doesn't matter, who wrote it. It literally just has to serve the purpose. You can't put up a storefront and not build a store behind it and expect to make money. And that's really what it boils down to. I can write bad content. I have written bad content. I don't like to admit that all the time, but I've written bad content that didn't work and just what didn't serve the answer, or didn't answer the question and serve the user like it was like they expected, and it tanked. And that we're seeing the same thing with AI. Some AI generated content does very well. It does better with the human element to filter out, make it readable, make it understandable, and by making it readable and understandable, you make it trustworthy. And by making it trustworthy, people stick to it, and they use it, and they share it, and they link to it. And that's the whole cycle that's SEO is does your content do what the user needs it to do? And if it doesn't, then either you don't have good content or you've targeted it to the wrong person. And all those signals go back and feed the algorithm, whether that's a search engine algorithm, which is I would say at this point an elementary version of AI, or serve the AI algorithm, which is far advanced, but still is an algorithm that measures the engagement of content.
Yeah, I don't want to say content is king, but without saying it, I'm going to say it because it's at the end of the day,
Absolutely.
it's what it's all about. What do audiences want? What brings value to the person using that search engine, that website, everything we talked here about today. It
Mm-hmm.
ultimately comes down to what content brings value to the audience. And I think we'll definitely be talking a lot more about AI. I think you and I will have plenty of future episodes on that topic. But I think with that, I want to thank you for all your insights here today. This was great, and I'm sure we'll be bringing you on many more episodes in the future, as well as members of your team. So thanks, Brent, and everybody who joined. Until next time, thanks for joining.
Thanks, Phil.